Okay. Good evening, everybody. Tonight we have Officer Travis Coley with us. Officer Travis Coley is a crisis intervention officer for the DC Police Department. So we do have him with us tonight. So we ask that you sit attentively and that you listen because Officer Coley has done several presentations for us and they have been very informative. And we believe that he's going to be a blessing to advocacy tonight. So, with that being said, Officer Coley, take over.
Well, good evening, everyone. It's an honor and a pleasure to be on this platform. Today, I'm just going to go into how law enforcement blends in with the community for everyone. And I'll start by introducing myself for all those who don't know me, Officer Travis Daniel Coley, Sr. I'm the youngest of three kids. I happen to be blessed to have my oldest sister on here as one of the moderators. Uh, I'm a husband, a father of four kids, two boys and two girls. And a little bit about my background. I attended Temple University where I studied criminal justice. Uh, I also enrolled into the Army National Guard coming out of high school, where I was a military police officer. And professionally, I've been a member of the Metropolitan Police Department for 18 years. Uh, the Metropolitan Police Department is broken down into seven districts. And of those seven districts, you know, things happen over certain districts. I've been a member of the seventh district. I've done my whole career there. And the seventh district is part of one of maybe three districts. I think four, six, and seven are the three districts that have the highest cluster of high crimes. To kind of give it a little perspective, the seventh district is it's the district where once we've had recruits who have graduated and they get assigned to the seventh district and they quit because that's the volume of calls that come through the seventh district. 2 years working in the seventh district is equivalent to 5 years, 6 years maybe working in like the second district. So of the seventh districts, uh, the seventh is near and dear to my heart because it's where I was born, Southeast DC, and I was able to grow up there from birth to about the sixth grade, and then we moved to PG County, Maryland. I always felt a little jaded because as a kid, for me, I always wanted to get to that point in life where I was able to catch the public metro bus to school, and that's what you do in DC once you get to about the junior high, high school, and I'm in my last year of elementary, and we moved, and I was on the cheese buses out in Maryland. So part of my heart wanting to work in the district that I was born in and raised in for a portion of my life is what drew me back to the seventh district. Um, Outside of that, I'm a field training officer. I've been one since I want to say 2014. So 10 years. Wow, time flies. So, and one of the main reasons that I became a field training officer, it happened right around the Mike Brown incident. That's Ferguson, correct? Mike Brown. Yes. And so when that happened, that's when policing and law enforcement changed for everyone. All of Black officers, I would say, had to do a real hard look in the mirror because that's the first time that public opinion really started to sway nationally at law enforcement. And I actually had college associates and people reach out like, how can you still be a part of that system? And so for me, I came down to something that said, "It's what can I do if I'm going to be here? What am I going to do to make a change? I'm already working in my community, but I got to do something deeper." And that's what led me to become a field training officer because my mindset was I can have a hand in how those who come into law enforcement treat my community. So it's not just enough for me to be an officer in my community, but now I wanted to have a say on how officers treat the people in my community. So what that allows me to do is I keep a constant lock or connection to generations as they come. And the generations of officers change like every 3 to 5 years. So right now, my district is probably one of the youngest districts, partly because of such a high call volume, people get burnt out. Our department had to implement a mobility program, which allows you to switch out of your district after only doing 3 years on the job, and you can request to move to another district. So we've had people to prevent stuff like burnout. Um, they've requested to go to other districts, and all of our veterans left. So right now, my department or my district is probably made up of mostly 7 years or less officers. And so there's a lot of youth. And I'm the one that they come around, and I've graciously been given the title of uncle or, just FTO because I'm able to bridge that gap. And so I thank God for that He's allowed me to do that. And through the years, people have 10 years on, they reaching out now saying, hey, Coley, can I bend your ear about something and things of that nature. But in dealing with advocacy and how that plays a part. I want to say I've been an FTO for 10 years. I think, oh, it's right here on my list. In 2018, opportunity came for me to take the training for crisis intervention officer. Now, I had always dealt with uh, members of the community. I had no issues, I would say, for myself in handling those type of calls. And I've always looked forward to those type of calls because those are the calls where I would take my time. It's nothing for me to spend an hour, 2 hours in someone's house talking because that's the job. I've always taught people that we're here for 8 to 10 hours. I'm in no rush. I want to make sure you got all the services you need, anything I can help you with, and that's what law enforcement is. That's what it's supposed to be. We're here to serve and protect. So if I'm here to serve you, then I'm going to make sure everything. Is there anything else you want a waiter or someone to come to your table and say, is there anything else I can assist you with? So before I leave a person's house, I want to know, is there anything else? You have any questions about anything else? Anything I can assist you with? And so the opportunity came in 2018 for me to take what is crisis intervention. And I had heard somebody say that it's one of the best trainings you can get. You got to go take it, Coley. You will love it. It's okay. But they said there was a requirement, like you couldn't just take the class. They wanted serious people. And the reason being, they wanted you had to meet certain characteristics, and this is what our department had as far as characteristics of, it'll say CIO officer for crisis intervention. Uh, essential Essentials for CIO recruitment was you had to have demonstrated interest in the program voluntarily. They didn't want nobody saying, hey, my sergeant made me come take this class, because they knew who you would be dealing with. You had to have a history of effective interactions. And I just told you, like, I've always been that person. My interactions, just a side note, I was nicknamed by one of my fellow officers. I think he was Russian. He said, "You're the Southeast Whisperer. Like you can just talk to people who are like on 100, and they look at me and they go to 1,000. They look at you and then they just come all the way down." So
Oh,
once he said
wow.
that, yeah, that stuck, and that has stuck all these years.
The
So
Southeast
I've been,
Whisperer.
and that spoke to like the type of officer I already was before I took the class. You had to have had the ability to collaborate with other community supporters, and most importantly, you had to have a calm and self-control under pressure, strong communication skills, and good judgment and decision-making skills. So these are things that I want to say. I thank the Lord. Something I'm always praying for is wisdom, how I can be effective in my home, on my job, in my church. And these things have just played out in my career. So when I took this class, it blew my socks off. We was away from our district. It's a 40-hour training class, but they take you out of the district. You go to a facility where it's like classroom facility, but then it's hands-on. We actually went into the Department of Behavioral Health. We got to meet with the district's all the influential people that deals with mental health and disabilities and things of that nature. And I think for 2 days, I forget the name of the building. I think it was off of Wisconsin Avenue. We went in and it was just everyone in there was dealing with something, whether it was schizophrenia, bipolar, depression, anxiety. And you got to sit around and we had lunch with these people and they just told us their stories. And one thing
Mhm.
I always remember is like everybody didn't get here the same way. Some people's stories was, well, I was sexually abused as a child or as an adult, or I ended up on drugs and lost my mind, and other things of that nature. So, but in that calm area, we were able to sit and have lunch and talk. And that day just flew by so fast for me because I was just like, before you know it, I mean, I was sitting at a round table, maybe three officers and 15 members of what we call the mental health consumers. And that's a term that the department has used to identify anyone that's in need of neurological or have been diagnosed with any type of whether it be autism, schizophrenia, bipolar, um, anxiety, depression, anything that's on that level. So if you hear me use the term mental health consumer, um, please don't be offended if anyone's out there. I want to say it's just department term for us. So when they get a call for a mental health consumer, the first thing is an officer who's not trained, they will get on the radio and say, "Can I have a CIO officer respond to my scene?" And that's how they come and get me. So anything dealing with it, and mental health consumer can be someone who's actually in an altered state of mind because they're high on drugs. So at that point, they're a mental health consumer for us. And some departments use the term EDP. I think Virginia does that, which is emotionally disturbed person or things of that nature. And that's just like departments come up with these, not us individuals. So, being in my family, I have members of my family who um, require have special needs in that arena, in that community, that has helped me. So from cousins to aunts and uncles and things like that, I've been able to take some of the things. It wasn't new to me. It wasn't in the sense of a shock value. And one of the very first calls I can remember in the seventh district, and you go through as an FTO. At this time, I was in training, but um, I never forget. Well, I'm gonna come back to that one. I want to tell you the one outside. I
But
was.
real quick, Travis, I have a question.
Yes.
I'm trying to let you go, but I wanted to ask, like, the field officer. I know that's where you started off. Can you tell us? I know you're talking about it, but we don't know what that is. Can you tell us what did that person do when you were a field officer? I think you said field officer training.
Field training officer. My
Yeah,
job is
field training.
FTO, field training
Yeah.
officer.
Yes, when you first
So
came. Yes, when you signed up for that.
when I applied for it,
No, no, no. You function in that role, correct?
I am now. I'm still a FTO as well
Okay,
as a
so what
CIO
so
officer.
you're training people. That's what I'm trying to find out. Exactly. Can
Yes.
you tell our listeners what that is, please?
So as a field training officer, when a recruit finishes the academy, they get
Mhm.
assigned to their districts. And if they weren't so heart stricken and decided not to quit because they came to the seventh district, they will come, and we have some great field training officers at the seventh district. And because you're going to learn on the fly, we don't baby you. Uh, the call volume is so high, it's like training day to the 10th degree, because you don't have time to, if you're shy, you got to get over it, because it's feet to the fire in the seventh district as well as the sixth district and some others. But as a field training officer, and I can just tell you what I bring to the table. I like to use what people pull out of you, what your strengths are. Some field training officers are very heavy on, hey, making sure you remembered everything that was in the books, that was in the academy. Some field training officers, like myself, are very practical. I'm just like, everything that you learned at the academy, let's just apply it. You know, you can go back and study on your own if you with me. I'm like, you can go study on your time. We out here, I want to see how you interact with these people. Don't be afraid to talk to people. Don't be afraid to introduce yourself. Remember, customer service first. And it's never one of the biggest things as a field training officer is letting people know that's not personal. Sometimes the uniform alone is just going to put you behind the eight ball. But once a person sees that you're not affected by the attacks that come at the uniform, but that you can bring the person in you, first you have to show that there's a person in the uniform. And so that's one of the main things that if you ride with me, I want you to know that whoever you are in the uniform has to be portrayed out there. Now, it is just a job to some people. You can't make everybody love your community. Some in law enforcement, it was so hard to get into law enforcement at one point that everyone's relocating to do it. So it's nothing for someone from Puerto Rico to end up coming to Washington D.C. to become a police officer. It's not, a lot of recruits are from New Jersey, they're from New York, they're from Indiana. So it's not their community. I myself was in the final stages of joining the NYPD when I got the call to come home myself. So I often ask myself, what type of officer would I have still been the same officer I am today if I'd have ended up in like an all Jewish community or an Italian neighborhood or something where it's, the language isn't my type of language or the culture isn't what I'm used to. So I have to get people to understand that I know this isn't your culture. It's a culture shock to some people, but you have to be open minded. And we in this profession, we can't afford to let our biases. We have to check our biases at the door. And once we learn to do, and like I said, from Mike Brown on, I've been hard nosed on that. That's the reason I stepped up because again, I'm like I got family in the southeast, and I want you to police this community. If you got respect for me, I want you to have respect for everyone in this community because my family is out here. And I shouldn't have to point it out and say, if you go to this address, that's my family, treat them right. Every address you go to, I want you to treat them right. So I'm only one officer, but I can affect the minds of so many officers through the years. And it's why I still do what I do. People ask, do you know you still at the 7th district after 18 years? I'm like, because I'm enjoying what I'm doing. I don't want to give it up no time soon. Well, you didn't take the sergeant test and move up. I'm like, man, I can lead from the front and the back. So I have more ears and eyes on like, what should I do now? Because being an effective field training officer keeps me in that contact or that line of communicating to the generations as they come in. Can I talk to you? Coley, all the, people, don't bring that nonsense over there to Coley. That's like a father to me. That's like my uncle. Don't talk that nonsense. So I thank God for that. And so being a field training officer, and like I said, the 7th district has some great field training officers.
I
People
love
who
it.
I've trained are now field training
Absolutely.
officers. So I
Nice.
have a tree now that I'm like, oh, I'm like, who'd you see before you came to me? And they be like, so and so. I'm like, I trained her. You good? You
This is
This
amazing
is
to
good.
hear all that. Yes.
Yes.
And so as a crisis intervention officer, like how are you effective in that area? How are you operating there?
Okay, so let me open up with let you know what the duties of a crisis intervention officer are. And according to our manual, the CIO, crisis intervention officer, must be an experienced MPD patrol officer with a demonstrated interest in responding to individuals with mental illness. CIOs are not mental health counselors and are only dispatched to mental health calls requiring police assistance. Mental health crisis services should be utilized for other situations, which we generally have the resources. We kind of know how to get in contact with people who have an ACT team. That's one of the things I may come up and say, hey, do you have an action team that we can call if a person is going through a crisis and there's a loved one there? I may ask them, do they have a social worker or a counselor or a case manager, anybody who helps them maintain their medications or get them, do they have are they on file with the mobile crisis hotline? So, because we have a mobile crisis team that will come out 24/7 to certain scenes. So, whereas, because again, we want to take police hands off of mental health for the most part. But because we can't stop it, a lot of times mental health are in a situation where they're a danger to themselves or others, police have to get called. So now that we have to get called there, it's like, how do we minimize the heavy hand of law enforcement when people need help, not enforcement? And that's where the crisis intervention officer mindset is from the very moment you called on scene. Your mindset is like, okay, come here. And most officers, you get so used to just showing up and it's like law enforcement. I'm here to save the day. Well, a win for me as a CIO officer or crisis intervention officer doesn't look the same as a patrol officer. They may say, well, my win looks different. Their win is I got to lock up and I got the person out the house who was acting crazy. But for me, it's like after 2 hours, this person was de-escalated, finally decided to go to sleep because they was tired of talking to me after, they finally was like, look, you talking my head off. I'm like, hey, I'm just here. I've had people say, you cool and all, but I'm tired now. But in that time that I've talked to them, they've come all the way down. They may have decided to go ahead and finally take their medication, or decide that they're going to give up the whatever the behavior was that got us called out in the first place. And from an array of things, which I'm gonna get into in a little bit. But
Well, Travis, I
Travis.
got a quick question.
And their questions already coming through. Go ahead,
Yeah,
Bunny.
because I was trying to let you talk and talk, but I've got so many questions.
Oh
But
my
I want the
goodness.
questions. Come on.
what is there a difference from a mental when you first mentioned something about there could be a mental case going on and then a crisis? What is the difference between the two, or are they pretty much the same? If I'm calling for assistance for a special needs individual, is that identified? I know you said that mental is the umbrella, but then there's everything falls under the umbrella of mental. Would that be the same case as a crisis intervention?
Yes, it would be, because, like I said, the umbrella is falls under is for the regular patrol officer. I'm gonna just say for the field officer, the
Okay.
patrol officer that's out there. He gets a call, and when he gets on scene, the parent is saying, "My son is he's a little agitated.
Mhm.
He's starting to," and this was a recent one, so I might as well go tell the story. Mom and dad gave us a call, and their like 24-year-old son he was just constantly his agitation was going up. And they was just saying like, hey, last night we had to sleep because we had to block the kitchen because he wanted to get up and try to make a sandwich, but he just threw like bread in the oven and left it on high, and did some things that were like kind of dangerous, left the pallet on, and other things. And then you could hear in his talk like he's talking to mom, but at the same time he's not talking to mom. He's saying some other things like he's a little off. And what they were saying was that he was in the process of being diagnosed. They was like, he's like he doesn't even have a diagnosis yet. But in my mind, I was like, I've seen this before. He's going to be, you know, how this could end up if it's not handled kind of like kid gloves. They needed him to get on an ambulance by himself, well, without being forced, and take a ride to the hospital for a psych eval because his um, his diagnosis appointment was scheduled for like Tuesday, and this was Sunday night. So they
Mm.
were just like, we, the help is on the way, but his agitation is starting to get worse and worse. And they was like, we not sure we can make it. Dad was like, Dad, I think has something wrong with his spine, so he could barely, officer, do you mind if I pull on you to stand up? I'm sorry, I'm not trying to. Sure, man, come on. And he was just like, I'm gonna go with him. I'm gonna ride in the ambulance. But it was like he didn't want to go. And then the officer there was like, what do you need? So the moment they show up, they say, hey, this is clearly a mental health consumer. And that's where it falls under the umbrella. Not
Okay.
saying exactly what his diagnosis is, but this young man is in a crisis. His mental state is starting to agitate and elevate to the point where mom and dad no longer are feeling totally safe. They're blocking the kitchen. Someone has to sleep downstairs. They was like, he's just up and down the steps all night. That was one of the things. He didn't sleep at all last night. They was like, he's been up for over almost 48 hours and things of that nature. So called in, and it was just like, we're going to talk and we're going to see like, are you okay with going? And a few things got him elevated. We waited it out a little bit and said, hey man, biggest thing was he really didn't want to create too much of a distraction. Oh, he kept wanting to walk out the house because he knew his money would hit his card at so-called like midnight, but he wants to walk out and go to an ATM at 2 o'clock in the morning. And they like, no, you can't
Yeah.
go out there like that. Like, no. So
That's a
we were able
scary
to just
situation,
calmly.
even
Yeah,
for
it's like,
the
how can you
field
finesse the
officer.
situation to help those who are
Right.
asking for the help?
Yeah,
And
especially
everybody
to
Takes a lot of
involved.
patience.
de-escalate it. Yeah, that's the
Yeah.
concern. How do the field officers, or do they know to de-escalate the situation if the person is approaching you because of the agitation? Should us parents assume that that officer would know how to de-escalate the situation because this is a mental consumer?
Well, every officer has de-escalation training, but
Mhm.
the crisis intervention officer, that training is taken sort of like to the next level, specifically dealing with the mental health community. And so in understanding what you're dealing with, like I said, the most officers are looking to get or I say not most, a lot of officers looking to get on and off of the scene because the next call is already in the call log. And so it's like, hey, let's knock these calls out. But I have to tell some officers like, we got all night. You know, the calls are going to be there. You don't want to shortchange someone, their services, their time.
Mhm.
You don't want the worst thing, and I've seen this on scenes that don't require mental health. It's just a regular call. People want to feel like you're listening.
Yeah,
So
I'm
if you
calling for
call
the
it
crisis
because
team.
the
Thank you for letting me know.
yeah,
I'm bypassing the patrol officer. I'm calling directly for the crisis team.
so
Only
for
bunny.
Can you
District of
do that,
Columbia,
Travis? Can you
I'm about to
ask
say for
them
the
to
District
call?
of Columbia, we have the crisis intervention officer. For other departments, and depending on where you are, there are a lot of departments have moved towards having a group of people who are specifically trained to deal with mental health. And so either they've partnered with, like even though we've partnered with Department of Behavioral Health as well,
Mm-hmm.
depending on what city you in, you may want to look up and see how has your department, local department, partnered with the mental health community. What
Especially after
trainings have they
COVID.
taken? Because everybody hasn't. Some people got small
Yeah.
town departments, and they just haven't spent the money or they haven't taken part in anything like that. So and
Yeah.
these are the things that when we see what makes national news, what people put out on, and some of the things I'm just like, how could that person do X, Y, and Z? And then you find out like, well, this took place in some part of some small town in Texas, or this took place somewhere here, and you're just like, I've actually done the research, like, oh, well, and looking up that department is only less than 500 people and this that and the other, and they don't have the resources and they not using the state resources to because they're a little local and things of that nature. So what's in their budget, what's not in their budget, it's a lot of the major cities have made those strides to bridge that gap because we don't want to have instances. There's too many of them out there already where I called because he needed help, not to
Yeah.
be gunned down. I didn't call for
Exactly.
that. So
Yeah.
and it really hits home when a person is being harmful to themselves or others. And
Mhm.
even when they're being harmful to themselves, that's not a ticket for me to come in and strong arm them or
Right.
anything like that. It's like, how do I get this situation? Most recently, I had a situation where a young lady was high on PCP. Her roommates knew she was smoking, but she was naked in her room holding two knives. And by the
Mm.
time they called for a crisis intervention officer, when I got it, they was like, "Man, we've been here almost 2 hours, about an hour and a half, trying to get her to come out the bedroom without the knives." So this lady is standing up. She's naked. She's not making any sense. First thing I want to do is see cognitively, is she understanding what's going on? How you doing, ma'am? I'm Officer Coley. Can I talk? And when you just hear like she's not responding, like she kept calling for Sandra Bullock. Sandra Bullock, save me, Sandra Bullock. And I was just like,
Not funny,
okay, she's not.
Lord
We're
Jesus.
not going to be able to have a conversation. So now it
Yeah.
was like, as a crisis intervention, maintaining our patience, we have to wait till we find a window to go in and
Mm.
disarm her with
Wow.
least amount of force.
Mm-hmm.
And we
Mm.
had sometimes people may not see, but that's where you're like we have less than lethal um, utensils. Sometimes you may see officers use what they shoot like the bean bags or taser guns or things of that nature. And that on this particular scene, we did have a sergeant who was equipped with a taser, but we never end up using it. Even though
Oh, great.
I'm not ashamed to say I had made the call like the next time she presents a large enough uh, target, you're gonna have to taser so that she can drop those knives and we can
Yeah,
remove
because
them.
it's her and you
But
guys and her
yeah,
roommate. It's so many different situations or things that could have come out, bad things that could have come out of that situation. So you're trying to definitely make it as peaceful as possible, but at the same time, it's like it's time when you know it's time to get the job done. And I like that because
yeah,
you're not just trying to jump to that as soon as you come in the door, like, listen, I'm tired. We got 10 more calls, let's just jump to it. Let's taser her, let's do this and that. But like you say, you take so many different steps before you even get to the point of using any type of force.
And that is so. That's
we
what's so good. Mhm.
We've now moved to what used to be called verbal judo, was like talking someone down. We've now reverted a new method called the CDM, constant decision making. And so with that's for all officers. So it's even more helpful for me as a crisis intervention. So now that we're all learning to constantly reassess, constantly say that, okay, within the last 2 to 3 minutes, what has changed? What avenues? Because at the same time, I remember this lady was in there. There was a plate of food on the floor that hadn't been touched and some things. So it's just like taking her mind off of what's going on. Like, hey, why didn't you finish eating your food? And if she looks down at it, I got her. I'm like, oh, she actually looked at the food. Okay, so I'm use that. How can I
So
do this?
she
How can I do it? But
understands.
she understands a little, but she was still under
Okay.
the influence of a narcotic, and at the same time, we knew that she was bipolar. So when drugs and all that, along with your mental diagnosis, is kicked in, you never know what you're gonna get. You never
And
know.
Travis, with
So it's
that
just like
same
constantly. Mhm.
now with that same situation, and LaShawn had a question too. I'm going to get to her question. My mother had a question. Denise had a comment. And this may be a two-parter too, because this you have a lot of information to give.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I'm just saying this is not going to be no one-nighter. But
Mm-mm.
in that same situation, once you guys kind of get the knives away from her, how do you deal with her afterwards? Because at that point, she's a threat to herself as well as others. How do you then remove her out of that situation? And then what are the next steps to get her there? To get like to deal with her.
Well, she's placed on a when a person is considered a danger to themselves or others. The nomenclature for that is called FD-12. That's the paper nomenclature, but it's a psychiatric hold up to 72 hours. So that means you have uh, no choice. You have to go. And once we take you there, the hospital or the facility, we either going to take you to one of the local hospitals, or we have a facility. I should have wrote it down, but it's CPEP. Each letter stands for something, but we are like we're taking them to CPEP in DC, and at CPEP is strictly for mental health. It's like a mental health clinic where people can stay overnight. They get diagnosed. They get their files. A lot of them are already on file in the system, so they already know like they've been off their meds for 4 or 5 months. When they get pulled up by law enforcement because they are a danger to themselves or others, sometimes that's the only time they ever get back on their medication for 3 days, and then they get released when they're doing well, and then they decide to not go fulfill the prescription, and it's until the next time they become a danger to themselves or others.
So
And that
So
marijuana isn't
sometimes,
helping.
yeah, that vicious
yes. And
cycle.
so the each city, each what's the name, that's pretty much universal. If you consider it a danger to yourself or others, when it's taken out of your hands, like the certain situations, you may have a family member that's like, listen, they talking a little crazy, and I need them to go and get checked out at the hospital. But I can't force that person to go because they haven't presented to themselves to be a danger to themselves or others. But if I've had a young man, 18 years old, his mom is cowering in her room behind a locked door because he has a hunting knife, and he's like stabbing and scratching up the walls in the house, and he's yelling and cursing at her, and she's just like, that's not her son out on the other side of that door. Well, he has no choice. He has to go. We have to put him in handcuffs and transport him to, he's not under arrest, but he has to get transported to a psychiatric facility where he would be on a 3-day hold or up to 3-day hold.
Okay,
Um,
just real quick with that, you know, with a situation where a person's behavior is unbecoming, how are they able to see if it's, I know you said how you address that situation as a crisis officer. Like, how are some officers are able to tell? How do you distinguish if this could just be, a neurological situation versus like a substance abuse situation?
mhm.
And because does that determine how you would handle something as well? Because sometimes neurologically, you know, I think in both you have to be careful, and handle it. But how do you distinguish that?
We get called out for them all. So for the board or the medical emergency medical system, your ambulance, the fire trucks, when they get called out to scene, sometimes it could be a person high on drugs, but they're going to be like, it's going to come across the police radio as go assist the medical board. They have a person is supposedly high on drugs and they're in an altered state of mind. Therefore, they fall under the umbrella of a mental health consumer. And if we can, let's get a CIO officer over there to assist the board, or let's get a CIO officer over there. So we're just going to end up coming out regardless if they can. But there's way more calls than there are CIO officers on the street. We can't go to them all. So as a regular officer, if you recognize that, you're still trained to find out one or two things. Is this person a danger to themselves or others? Now, if you committed a crime under that altered state, that's different. You're going to still get arrested, but you need to still have that wherewithal to say, this person doesn't need to go to central cell block tonight. They're under arrest, but they're going straight to the hospital for psychiatric hold. And then they'll see a judge after they're released from the hospital for the crime that they committed.
Okay.
Our regular officers are trained in that manner as well. But if there's a situation in which something can be possibly de-escalated, whereas you're looking out for the lady with the knives in her room who wouldn't.
But no, like sometimes it's not that. Like sometimes I'm thinking of like our autistic kids, they could be stimming. And to someone who's unfamiliar with what stimming looks like, they might think they're on drugs, And
so stimming, Crystal, stimming, can you define that for people that don't know what stimming is, or did you want me to look that up?
Stimming is a little hard to define, but it is what a lot of autistic kids, autistic people in general,
like
they may stim themselves food, and it looks different for each one. Some people rock, some people pace, some people do like this. They might talk to themselves, and seeing someone out in a local park just talking to themselves, they're doing repetitive behaviors, and this is soothing to them. They're in their element, and what if they're approached by an officer? And that's why I was saying, like, how are officers able, as they approach an individual, to know, to someone else, they might, I don't know, they may think that this person may.
Let me jump on that.
Let's add that the person is nonverbal.
Or so can't even explain or process what's going, to tell the officer.
Let me jump on it. Okay. Time to get out of here.
Okay. It's a calming thing. It's a calming technique. Yeah. Okay. That's what it is, guys. A calming technique.
I'm one of those officers that's going to tell you straight up. Policing, at least for me, has always been common sense. Common sense of knowing what's right, what's wrong, and how to deal with some situation. Now, I understand everybody ain't born with it. Some people need to order it and get it offline, wherever they need to do. But as a training officer, this is something that I try to instill in people. If you just have common sense sometimes and understand that even if a person is walking east and talking west, ain't no need for us to get involved. Keep it moving. Like, are they being a danger to themselves or others? Sometimes as police officer, people think that the uniform is not a cape for you to come and save the world. You can come on a scene and realize, like, well, ma'am, I'm sorry. Like, here's one where people constantly call, I'm sorry that the apartment building you live in is paper thin walls. But unless you're going to buy the couple upstairs some brand new carpet, there's nothing I can do for you. I'm so sorry that they have 4 kids, that they're up at 10 o'clock in the morning or 11 o'clock at night, and you hear pitter patter of feet. That's not a police, but I'm not going to just tell them, like, we ain't doing nothing about that. Ma'am, if I can, I will go up and knock on the door. Yeah, I will go and knock on the door and see if I can ask them, maybe it's late, try to put the kids down, but young people love to have fun, and the kids are up with mom and dad or hanging out till 10, 11 o'clock, needing the pamper change and all that in Southeast. So when you're in the hood, it's just, you got to be prepared for a lot of things and bring your patience. And so some of this is just common sense as a police officer. That doesn't require, if I came up on, I understand. That's what I'm saying. When I see these things
on into the most.
But then your professional, like we all have been in a certain profession for some times where at some point it's like yeah, you got to put common sense with your professional knowledge of things, and that should
Yeah.
come up to, yeah.
And what I tell
We
y'all,
got a
we're
lot of
getting so
questions,
young.
Travis. Oh my
We're
goodness.
we're so young as a district. I won't say department because I don't know what the other districts look like. But seventh district where I work, we're so young that a lot of times I've had people who turn 21 in the academy. And the one thing I have to tell people, I'm like, don't take this the wrong way, but see, you're a child growing up with the authority to take a life as well as take people's freedom. And I want you to understand that's something to never be light, take lighthearted. It's
Mm.
not just lock them up. You don't understand what they just lock up looks like for people. If you're a construction worker and that's what you do, you miss that shift, you off the job. The next man up because there's like 10 other construction workers waiting to get on the job. So if you just understand in certain things like we have a mandatory lockup for domestic violence. And it's just like, wow, that's a hard thing to do sometimes. It's like, I understand, but my department says that in the case of all, y'all could just have a little shoulder bump. If that's considered an
Mm.
assault, somebody got to miss work tomorrow because, and they
Right.
don't care whether we get it right or wrong. It doesn't say that I have to bat 1,000. I can actually make a mistake, but as long as somebody had to go, it's my job to try to determine who the aggressor is in a domestic situation. But I have to be honest with you. Not many people love to stick around and truly find out who the aggressor. Just because the person called doesn't mean that the other person was the aggressor.
That's right.
People use law enforcement as a weapon against other people all the time. And if you're not going to show up with your patience, you're not going to show up with your understanding, you're not going to show up with an open ear, active listening, people will tell you 3 stories in 2 minutes. I'm like, hold up, man. You just said, and that couldn't happen because you just said he came home at 8, but first you said he was here at 6 o'clock. Man, what you said? So sometimes it just goes and realize, oh, you caught me. I don't want to do nothing now. So you're like, no, no. So I would love to
Okay.
say that when it comes to things like that, especially with stimming and things like that, we're getting so much better because again, the training, at least for my department, is always constant. Every time I come into work, they're like, "Hey, you got to log on. There's a new training for you all to go over." And sometimes I feel like the online training is so quick, and I'm like, what if I got questions? But then we have our yearly professional development training, which they take us out the district and go do that, and that's the opportunity for us to ask a lot of questions and get them answered and find out how. And they always asking us, how can we improve this training? How can we do this? I just went to PD training, PDT professional development training a few about a month ago, and the whole thing was around that constant decision making. Like it was just like, hey, you got called because there's a guy in a schoolroom in a classroom with a bat. But when you go in there, most people think, oh, he's in the classroom with the bat, but there was no kids in the classroom. He was upset because supposedly a teacher was messing with his wife and da da. And it's just like, but what are you gonna do? You gonna come in there with guns and blazing or this, or are you gonna come in like with your mind open, like that dude was just in a crisis? Yeah, he wasn't a mental health consumer, but he was still in a crisis. And obviously something was wrong with his head. It was role play, but they wanted you to understand like he wasn't there to hurt nobody. He really just wanted to see this guy and talk to him about what's going on. Are you trying to sleep with my wife or da 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 da? And it was like, but how many people came in ready to put him down because he was in the school? Man, your antennas are going to go up. Hey, this guy's in the school, this classroom. But it's like, are you constantly thinking? And when they put us in situations like that, I'm like, that's good training. That some people go in and they're quick, they're ready to put this guy down. I'm just like, yeah, we need more training because you kind of see everybody ain't on the same page. So we need this type of training to keep going. And what's the name? I see someone's asking, what if it's a minor? Even with minors, we're still trained to one as a CIO officer. I remember I'm going to talk to my mom. Do we have contact numbers for their ACT team? Do they have a crisis personnel that they can get in touch with 24/7? Like, do I really need to take this kid out of the home tonight, or can we make a phone call and see if there's some services that can come to them? If not, then mom, I'm gonna need you to get dressed too because we're gonna escort you both down to Children's Hospital and put in for a request to see the psych ward and psychiatric assistance, and so things like that. So again, never, we've had people to try to use us again as a weapon. Oh, they act great, just take them out of here. I'm like, it doesn't work like that unless they are a danger to themselves or others. But if they're just not taking their medication and they're off, that's where it really takes that patience to come in and really talk and see. Let's get to the root of why aren't we taking our medication. And one thing I would say, and this is a big one, uh, a lot of times I just had this recently, a couple nights ago. a young lady, she called herself. She knew she wasn't right. So she called and said, I want to ride to the hospital. Okay. A fire truck showed up. So of course they can't take her, but they wanted us to take her. And I'm like, that's always a little dicey because again, if you get in a police car, we have to put you in handcuffs for our safety. So we always let them know you're not under arrest. This is just for the transportation. We're going to get you down to the place where you need to go to get the help. But we called. She was a obese young lady, and so we had our wagon come, and she was okay until the officer went. I went to. She said, "Where's my purse?" I said, "Let me go look and see if it's still on the back of the fire truck." I peeked my head around the fire truck. She was standing there with one cuff on one hand and her hands up like that, and my officer is standing back like, "What do I do now?" And all of a sudden, she was like, "He's being weird." I was like, huh? She was like, your officer being weird. No, I'm not going with y'all. I didn't even call for the police. I called for an ambulance. Why don't I have an ambulance? Why y'all trying to take me in a police car? I was like, okay, man, we're going to try to get you exactly where you want to be. And that's all we're here to do to help facilitate. If you after you do not have to ride with us, that's fine. If you don't want to ride with us, she was like, no, I don't. I said, can I have my handcuff back? Because I would hate for you to get hurt with that on your hand, on your wrist. She was like, yep, go ahead, take that off. Took that off. And we let them know that you're gonna have to call for an ambulance to come and take her. But they was like, well, we can't do that. I'm like, yeah, you can, because again, your medical services, well, they're like, well, we already triaged her and being a fire truck, they're not going to send. I said, sir, we only take people when they have no options. She still has options because she's still able to communicate. She's still able to what, and I say, and she's communicating to us that she does not wish to travel via police. We're going to have to call for an ambulance and get here. They called their supervisor and everything. I was like, hey, that's between you all and your supervisor, but all I know is ambulance or as we say, the EMS had to deal with that. And because again, I was like, if the police don't need to be here, especially when it comes to mental health, we're not going to force it. We're not going to force our involvement into a mental health crisis.
Yeah, sound like it could be a bit
Especially someone
triggering.
who's, yeah, I was like, and that's when I had to let this particular person who was on the fire truck know. I said, you have to understand, sometimes our uniform alone triggers a person. We're not here to escalate. We're here to de-escalate.
Absolutely.
And if they say, I don't want no ride from you, you don't have to take one from me. That's fine. We just want to get you where you're going. So,
Travis,
and
I know there's a
it
question
worked out.
on the screen, but I did want to ask you just before this question, with regards to the training, have you guys ever really just did training specifically for autism? Because that seems like autism is everywhere on the spectrum and it looks different for everybody. So, have you guys ever just held a training just surrounding on what does autism look like? You know, probably starting with what is autism and how it affects people.
This thick book. It's
Uh-huh.
in this training, in the CIO training book.
The
So,
the book should
and it
be
goes
titled
through.
Autism Training. That thick book
Oh no,
should
but
be autism.
it does go through a lot of things to look for. Now, again, there's no specific like strictly on autism, but in the crisis intervention officer training, that 40-hour training, there is a block that talks about all the different autism, schizophrenia, paranoia, and things like that. They was like, if a person is in delirium, that high state of just, you may think that this person is like being aggressive, but they're in an altered state of mind and things of that nature. So it's like we're not there to diagnose. Oh, this is autism. No. A lot of that times that comes from the help of the loved ones that are around. Hey, does anybody know this guy? Are there any diagnoses that they have that you can assist me with in knowledge? Do they have any medications? Because we want to write that down. It's like, hey, are they on any medication? Whenever we're looking for missing children, missing persons altogether, we want to know everything. Are they on any medication? Do they have any illnesses? Have they been diagnosed with anything? Part of that is in almost every makeup of a report. We want to know who we're dealing with. Because again, if you're dealing with someone who has they paranoia, schizophrenia, they see you, they don't see you, they view you
Mhm.
as help, as what's the name? I've had people who, they think lasers, the tenant underneath them are shooting lasers through the floor, and they're ready to go
Mhm.
downstairs with whatever they can to fight with because they're tired of it. And I'm just having like, oh, we're about to create something. Like that person is gonna, you guys are gonna end up fighting if you don't, de-escalate the situation. And one of the very first things I ever was a part of, and this was because I had seen it in my own family. I responded to a scene. I was a young officer. I responded to a scene, and it was a dark house. Got a call to this place. It's so dark. They let us in. I'm just like, every window was covered, every mirror was covered, and the living quarters, like all this house, and here this person was like living under like a coffee table in the house, had made like a
Mm.
home in the home of just a coffee table, and then they had like a crown of CDs that they used on their head, and this is how they kept their sanity. And the officer, I was a young officer, and the person who I was with immediately was about to go into like, oh my God, what in the world? And I was like, I've seen this before. And this is before I even had training. I
Mm.
was like, I've seen this before. And I was like, that's my family member in a sense. I was like, that's my family member. And I probably one of the boldest things, because again, as a 1 or 2 years on, usually the senior officer runs the scene. I just went into my mode. Like I spoke to that person as if they were my family member. And I was able to get everything that they needed. And it was just like, wow, you're going to see everybody you know in your family in the streets of, as a law enforcement. And you're going to come across, you're going to hear someone talking, like, you sound just like my brother. And I talk to people all the time. I was like, can I talk to you now? Can I talk to you like I would talk to my brother? Boy, what is wrong with you? You know, I'm like, well, hey, man, all right. We did all the legal stuff. All right. And so now I'm going to close my notebook and I'm going to talk to you like I would my sister. Why in the world are you staying with this guy and you got kids and you don't know nothing about him? Da, da, da. So now they're like, okay, you did the police thing. Now you talking to me as a regular person.
I
And
love it.
it's like,
They
when I
need
just,
to clone you. You need to be cloned.
This has been Travis. I mean,
Money. I was just about to
this
say,
is Travis.
this
This
is
Yeah.
is Travis. It's
Travis.
natural,
I
and
enjoy it.
Mhm.
that's the thing. It's like it's not too many people out there that's natural. Like this, for me, it wouldn't work. I mean, it's as heartfelt as I am with people's situation. I don't have the patience that he has, and I mean, Travis. This has been Travis. I mean, I'm not surprised. I'm
Yeah,
just
the
not his
compassion,
mannerism.
all
Yes,
yeah.
always family oriented, all of this. And LaShawn said it, my mother's saying it. This is Travis.
This is
This is
Travis.
Well,
Travis.
I'm glad that you're taking time to talk to us because with my grandson being autistic and nonverbal, it does concern me when he gets a little older and he's not able to, use words. If he runs into a situation and he needs help, it does concern me. However, this has given me a glimpse of hope that I can call and just say, can I speak to the crisis prevention team, please? No.
But too, I
So
do
I see a
believe as
question. How do
time
you
goes
handle?
on. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I do believe as
Mhm.
time goes on, I do believe that there should be a department specifically for the disabled kids.
They're
Like you
trying
said,
to,
I think
like
that would be
DC,
great.
I know they're trying to put more money in. That ultimately they want to phase law enforcement out of it. Like when you find out that a person is of a, for us, a mental health consumer of any nature,
Mhm.
outside of being high on PCP or some type of drug or being drunk or things like that. But when you find out that true people with disabilities or mental health issues, they need the professionals, people who do this, and
Yes.
the
Mhm.
funding to have the staff that work 20. I work midnights. So again, it's not easy for me to pick up the phone. When I pick up that phone and call that team, I'm calling the person who's going to make the call to the person who's on. And so it usually means you're going to end up staying with that person for about an hour because someone has to get out their bed, get dressed, come over, try to de-escalate. And 9 times out of 10, they really would rather you just go ahead and take them to the hospital. So it's
Yeah.
like if the person don't want to go to the hospital though, and they're not a danger to themselves, I can't force them to go. Now it's just like you're going to have to come out and talk to them because if, a lot of times we have to advocate for them, and that's one of
Mhm.
elderly people. One of the I had a call where a guy's in his house. Um, as soon as I walked in, the smell, I said, "Oh my goodness, how old is this guy?" I was like, "He obviously didn't use the bathroom on himself." He walked across the room, his pants fell straight to the floor. This guy was like almost 80 years old, living alone. He
Mhm.
had he had a 38 revolver in the house. There were bullets on the floor from a 9 millimeter. He was trying to put the wrong
Mhm.
ammo in a wrong weapon. Uh, the gun was from his brother-in-law who had retired from MPD over 30 years ago. His upstairs window was broken. because he said someone had broken in the house before. And when I went to the kitchen, I said, let me go to the kitchen. I opened up the refrigerator. It wasn't even plugged up. The refrigerator looked like it was a place for you to just go in and hide. There was no shelving in it.
No.
It wasn't plugged up, nothing in it. I said, man, did you eat today? He started talking about somebody who was supposed to bring him something. I went out to my car. It was somebody else's scene. I just went out to my car, got on the phone, and contacted the elderly, what's it called? Elderly services, basically. It's almost like how you call child and family services for children. We have the same thing for the elderly. When I got finished advocating for him, the person on the other line said, Officer Coley, thank you so much. You gave detailed information,
Wow.
very helpful. I was like, I don't think someone needs to probably try to come out tonight. And I said, because again, I had an officer on the scene trying to lock the guy up because for illegal firearm. I was like, what do I lock up an 80-year-old man for? We can take the firearm because it's a what's the name? We can put
It's a
that on the
game.
books. Like we can get
Exactly.
that out of his hand. But
Yeah.
what's it going to look like for him tomorrow, the next day? There's
That's
no
right.
food here. There's no
It's a
he got
blessing for you to
defecated
be
on
on
himself.
scene.
So, yeah. So I said, man, things like that. You want to advocate, continuously advocate for the people you're working with. And it's hard when you have foreigners. People, like I say, foreigners can be, I'm from another state. But even when I'm from another country, everyone's heart isn't always there. It's just a job to some people, and there's nothing wrong with that. If you do your job, I've trained them. Hey, it's just a job. I understand it's just a job, but remember, it's a job for you. But it's my livelihood. It's my community. So how you do your job, if you're doing your job the way you're trained, we'll never have a run in. So again, just remember, part of the job is performing this job. A lot of times we will make sure will it look good on the news. That's all you gotta say. You make sure you whatever you're doing, you would do it the same way you would be doing
That's
it, whether
right.
the
If
cameras were
cameras
on
were
you or
on
not.
you. That's right.
Because
That's a
Exactly.
cameras
great point.
are always on in these days. They're always on. People on their
Absolutely.
phones. We have our body cameras. So officers get in trouble for so many things because another officer's camera caught them doing something. I was like, I ain't telling you. They picked you up off my camera from doing something else. So you got to be careful. The generation of law enforcement that's moving forward, especially in the District of Columbia, is really cleaned up a lot. The way people talk. Used to have when I came on, there was nothing for officers to get into a joning match on the streets. They will tear and chew some of them people up. Well, that would get you fired or suspended for days now because it's like unbecoming. You're not supposed to verbally have a back and forth with people on the street. You're held to a higher standard. You're supposed to be able
That's
to take
right.
it. You're supposed to
That's
be able
right.
to like smile, and the professionalism sometimes turn that whole thing around. I've had to lock
That's
up,
right.
but because I've been professional, sir, gentlemen, ladies, by the time we get to the district, they're like, "My bad, man. I know you just doing your job. Like, I
Mhm.
appreciate you though. You was trying. I should have listened. The one time I screamed on somebody, I was like, man, I didn't want to lock you up. Like, you crossed that line. I gave you every opportunity, and it took until I was taking the handcuffs off him at the station. He was like, "You right? I was man. She made me upset. Man, I was telling you,
Most
I
people
did
just
my
want
best. I said,
respect.
man,
Most
Yeah.
people just
what
want
respect?
respect. And
Yes.
like you say, I think and that's in every facet of life. It's the tone you use, it's the words you use, because if you come across to people in a disrespectful manner, you're gonna just get God knows what. But when you sweeten it with some tea, some lemons, and I mean you take the lemons out, but you put a little sugar in it and all of that, you're gonna get a lot more. You're gonna get more respect, more consideration. You're gonna get people that are willing to work with you. But if you come at them in a disrespectful, volatile way, what can, you know and I,
Yeah.
I can't say, I mean, when you've been out on the street and some police officers are burnt out because some of them started
Yeah.
out good, and it
Yeah.
can be a burnout situation, but I think at that point you got to step away, and maybe it's time for you to walk off the
We
job.
have a training for that now. It's called able
Wow.
training. And again, then after George Floyd, it's something that again I had it in me. I knew I was like, ain't no way I'd have sat there and let. I don't care who that person was. We'd have
That's
been fighting
right.
as officers on the street. Like you're not going to do this. And but because of that, there's national training called able training, and basically they had to tell everyone is you're just as responsible for
That's
not
right.
pulling that officer off or
That's
to
right.
not intervening with your fellow officer. As long as you can document that, hey, I tapped him on the shoulder. I
That's
said,
right.
hey, step off. I got it. Hey, back up. I got this. Or you're redlining in a sense. That means you're just red eye, tunnel vision. You're looking for a fight. And sometimes you have to tell people, hey, this person did get under your skin. I got it. Tap them out. I got it. And I teach them like you got to be respectful. I've been tapped out once or twice in my career. Hey, Coley, I was yep. Let me go ahead and back off
When
because again,
keeping it real
I
goes
I got a
wrong,
family at
Travis.
home. I got a family at home. I'm not trying to
Keeping
miss
it
out on my
real.
family.
Yeah, we all
Yes,
have
yes,
those days, but I think it's checks and balances. It's right.
Yes.
What's the point of you
yes.
having other officers come to the scene and y'all sit there and watch that officer
You
continue to
condoning
perform?
that
Yeah,
behavior.
that's
Yes.
crazy. And I agree, they should hold them accountable. And I know you. It used to be back in the day. What it was it? You bleed blue or whatever,
And blue
and
line.
that's yeah,
Yeah.
that alliance or whatever. And I get that, but you still, when it comes,
That
like you
Not
alliance,
say,
today.
that alliance
Yeah.
has never stopped me. The alliance I joined
because
the
somebody could
department
be
with was
dead.
don't ever put me in a position to choose between you and my family because my family gonna always win. Every officer I've ever worked with have heard me say that and knows that to a fact. And I tell them you should adopt the same motto. Never, I don't care what you got going on, your hero on a department, if they put you in a situation to make you choose between them or your livelihood or your family, they should know that they're going to lose. So don't ask Coley when that's when people say, don't bring Coley into this conversation. I say, thank you. I don't even want to know what it's about. It could be everybody laughing at you
Right.
it could be an EEO complaint because they could be talking about something that they shouldn't be talking about out in the open. So you have to be mindful of conversations and things
Mhm.
like that. But and especially as it comes to mental health consumers and what you say, like you may think this person crazy. You can't say what you think.
That's
Person
right.
lost
That's
their
right.
mind. They're stupid.
That's
They don't.
right.
You can't. You have to stay on that thing. Be professional. How I've seen the way people interact with their family. And you, first of all, let me preference. I'm in the hood. Southeast DC, I'm in the hood. So again, I'm in an environment where ignorance is bred over generations. And it's not ignorance to them, it's the wisdom that they're brought up upon. So if you
Mhm.
don't have a mindset to recognize that this person is only using the tools that were placed in their toolbox, it's legit wisdom for them. How they deal with X, one, give them milk, do this. Some things you may say, in the world are you doing? But all you can do is be professional, man. That's not going. We got it from here. Allow us to do what we do. We're here now. We got this. But they're only doing or acting off of what they've been taught. That's how you're dealing with it. Sometimes you come in contact with people and you just like you're talking to a 60-year-old man, but he sounds like he's 16. How is
Mm.
that? You like the verbal communication? Like I've had people lose it on me because I don't curse. They don't understand the words that is coming out of my mouth because I'm not cursing.
Mhm.
How? Wow. And it's not for me to turn around and start cursing and make them understand. People used to do that. I don't speak your language. They only understand if I
Yeah,
say sit
no,
down and da 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 da. No, but you have to be able to. You got
that's
to
right.
fight through that. Fight through that, and it's even more as a. That's what you learn as a crisis intervention officer. That again, we got all day, and I can sit here and go back and forth, and like you say, as we stated earlier, not in the sense of we're just going to allow you to stand there with two knives in your hand, but if it's a situation where that person refuses to go get the help that they need, and they're aggravating everyone in the house. Well, all I can do is come out. We're gonna try to talk this thing out. We're gonna try to see how can I assist you being the caretaker? How can I assist you? So for those who have these family members, be very detailed when you call. If you're calling about anything involving a loved one,
Absolutely.
first of all, you say if they have, you can use the term crisis intervention officer. You can use people who are trained to deal with mental health issues and things of that nature. Every department has something different. Virginia, they'll say EDP. So if you have people who are trained to deal with EDP, emotionally disturbed persons, and things of that nature, you want people who are going to have patience and the people who know, like, I'm showing up and we're going to let the scene just go how it goes. And the only outcome that's a good outcome is an outcome where no one gets hurt
I
Mm-hmm.
love
and
it.
people receive the
Absolutely.
resources that they have.
And the fact that the
What?
officers can go home to their families.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, good.
Yes,
Look,
it has been
y'all.
so good.
Oh my goodness, no, we have
We
got
need a
to
part
have you back.
two. We need a
We
part two,
do. We
three,
have
four,
when I
five.
I
We
know
need.
because I ain't tell half the story.
I
I ain't even tell like
know.
only two
no, we gotta
stories.
have
We
you
missed
back, Travis.
questions.
Yes,
We
we
had
have so
questions.
many,
Yeah.
and it was
Let me answer
questions
that one
on.
question I saw up there for the longest. It said, what would you do if a person mental health is running towards you with something in their hand? And the thing is, officers always, from the moment you get on the scene, it's about your safety. So one, I teach officers that you never want to put yourself in an unsafe situation. Every scene you encounter, your antennas go up from the moment you get the call in the car. As you're responding there, your mind, you don't pull up on the scene this way. You don't walk as you see people. The first thing you're doing is looking at hands and how are they walking towards you or are they standing still? All these things should be, and if you're just blindly or mindlessly walking up, you're putting yourself at a disservice. So in your head, keep all these things functioning because it allows you to constantly make decisions. That CDM model, constant decision making. If a person, I'm walking to you and you're starting to walk to me aggressively, then that tells me something. Hey, I may see it. There's a car to my left, a bush to my right, something. I need to make a movement quick. If I recognize something is in your hand right away, like there was a video out where Lady Carter or adult son, mental health consumer, had a screwdriver, and the distance was there. If you keep it as an officer, you don't always go in and try to like save the day close up. You can stand by, sir. Create space. Can I get you to put that down? I would love to come and talk to you a little closer, but unfortunately, for my safety, I don't feel safe coming up to you. Can you put that down so we can talk? If y'all give me this one, just one, I got to tell you this one, and this would really help me. I was being trained, and this the coolest FTO. She was oh, I would love to give her a shout. I can't think of her name right now, but she was the coolest. She wasn't my FTO, but she was so cool and she was so hard and strict. Kid, you remember her name? The dreads, I mean the cornrows. So oh, anyway, we was on the scene and she was so hard nosed all the time. FTO Fisher, MP. She was MPO at that time, Master Patrol Officer Fisher. If she ever sees this, shout out to her because this helped shape my career. MPO Fisher, I wish I had her, but at the same time, I was like, I'm kind of glad I don't because she was tough. She was tough. And I knew like if you came up under her, you was gonna be a squared away officer. So we're on a scene, me and my FTO, her and the person she's training, the guy's walking with a samurai sword through the neighborhood. I mean, blade out and everything. And I have never seen this woman really say anything other than like correct. Like, they give her assignment, she's a copy. That's it. Like she was hard nosed, fearful. She just walked with that like tough nose. She came in the 80s, so she got to be the real police. So and you heard about the fights and things that she went through. So she came on that scene and this guy's walking and she was like, sir, can you stop for me? And this that, and the other. He wouldn't. He must have said something. He recognized that she was a female, right? So because again, like I said, cornrows and everything, hardened look, you would like double take sometimes, I guess. But the way her tone was, he picked up like, oh, she's a female. He was like, what you trying to do, babe? And she flipped in that one instance. She heard him say, what you trying to do, baby? And she turned into his best date. She was like, I'm trying to do whatever you want to do, baby. What we trying to do? I heard her, talking in a falsetto. I'm standing there with my mouth open.
Meet them where they are.
She met
Give them
him where
what
he
they
was.
want.
We ended up walking like another half a block. She was like, if we're going to do what you're trying to do, then you're going to have to put that sword down because, Daddy, I get off in this amount of hours and da 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 da. And he was like, what's up? Dad? And when he finally put the sword down, he turned around, put his hands behind his back, and let her put him in handcuffs. And when I was like, you must become whatever they need. From
That's
that
it.
day forward,
That's it.
I said, Bruce Lee said, you must be water. I learned that lesson from her. I teach it to everybody. I tell that story to everybody I train. I said, I was so caught up in how she worked that scene that I was actually watching the scene and not helping out. I looked up and all the officers had performed like a half circle around the guy, and I was the only one out the circle. I was like, oh, let me get back to work because I was in awe of how well she was working. And I took that from her. If she ever sees it, she didn't know, like, she shaped my career from that day forward. If you need me to be your uncle, brother, cousin, whatever you need to help get the scene done, I'm gonna do it. Because again, I can be an actor. If I'm a Leo, if I can be an
That's
actor.
it.
I can be whatever you need.
Be relative.
You know,
Yeah.
showstopper, whatever you need. But this person needed that type of help, and it helped facilitate the scene in a manner that everybody walked away
And
safe.
he was safe. Everybody was safe.
Yes.
That's really
Yes.
good.
When I tell you, I'm sitting on the edge of my seat. I'm not even gonna lie. Now I know Travis has always been, a kind-hearted person, but I mean, honestly, this you've gone to higher levels in my mind. This is my little cousin, and he said before we got on that he remembered the advice that I gave him when I came to his graduation from the police department. I asked him to please go and be on the school bus committee so he can direct the school buses. I tell him I did not want him running down dark alleys. He was our baby cousin. He was the youngest of the seven of us. And I always remember just little Travis. But I thank God for him
Yes.
because, I mean, when I just tell you, this is just grace and it's just such a blessing to just be just who you are because honestly
Yes.
everybody couldn't do this, and I don't care how saved you are, I don't care how nice you are, everybody could not play this role. They could not.
Yes.
um we gotta have you on for part two, Travis,
Yes.
because we have so many questions. We didn't even get to the questions on Instagram, and I took
Oh
a
wow.
picture of them. I took a picture of them because I think once Instagram is over, we can't see the questions again.
Hmm.
I don't think we can. However, I just want to say thank you. I did not get to introduce my co-host before we started. I'm sorry, allergies is acting up, brain fog, and then just really wanting to get Travis on the red carpet. But we have Crystal Francis and we have Bunny Smith. We almost Bunny came back, y'all, on the red eye to get here with us.
That's right. I was not missing this
Yay.
one.
Yes, yes. When I tell you guys, but I just love my co-host. Of course, Crystal has her five children, three of who are disabled. Bunny has her grandson, and of course, me with my Morgan Pop. I'm sure you guys have always heard about that. But we are the team that makes up Advocacy, and we just love Travis. We thank you. We're going to have part two. Yes, we. Oh, look at that shirt, guys. Our line is coming.
Can you
Oh
let
my
them know?
goodness.
Can
Yes.
you let them know where Advocacy came from? You can go and let them know now.
Okay,
It was a
guys, let me
family
tell
chat.
y'all this
That was
real
me.
quick. It was a family chat, and I told them, I said, listen, God is giving me a vision. I need that name that's going to jump out at people. Y'all should have seen everybody coming. Oh, we were coming up with all types of stuff, and we were trying to do a motto too with Advocacy. And Travis, now hubby did come up with he made say capital. He said make say capital. Yeah,
Hmm.
so everybody put in their input, but Travis, go ahead and say what you did.
Forget the motto I came up with, but it was like, when you can't say it for yourself, let Advocacy say it for you.
Say
And
it.
I was just like,
Yes,
yeah.
Ah,
You
I
can't
was like, that
use
was
yes,
the
me. That was
yes.
me.
bullhorn.
I love it.
That's why there's a bullhorn.
Yes, it is. That's
yes.
why it's a bullhorn, and there's volume coming out of that bullhorn because
That's right.
when we're advocating, we won't shut up. You can't shut us up. No,
That's
you
right.
can't shut us up. So we just want to again thank Travis for being here, guys. We
Thank you,
are going to
Absolutely.
Travis.
have part two, and what we may do is have a part two in April, Travis. So you let
Okay.
us know your calendar when these things are hot and heavy. We like to keep them going.
Yes.
So,
Okay.
yes,
Absolutely.
we have so many questions that we didn't get to, but guys, we promise he's coming back. We
Yep.
promise
And we're
that.
taking pre-orders.
Yes,
Oh,
All
pre-orders.
right.
As you can see, our advocate say shirts. Yes, those that want to look like us, want to represent advocacy, come
Yes.
on and join in with
Gotta
that
get me mine. I
clothesline.
gotta get one.
Yes.
yes.
So again, everybody, thank you so much. Travis, again, thank you, thank you,
Thanks,
thank you. We
Thank
Travis.
you,
love you.
Travis.
Yes.
We
I love
pray
you all
God's
too.
blessings and his safe upon your his safety keep you safe because
Absolutely.
God knows, you are one of a kind. But I know God is with you because all that you've been through. You are not burnt out, but you are energized, and that's what we need. We need those
That's what
energy.
we need.
Yeah, we need that energy out on that street like that.
Yes, and
Oh, my
see, y'all
mom.
don't put the merch out, but people want to know how can they pre-order.
So
Okay, we're gonna.
go follow the Advocates Say page, and we're going to
Yeah.
be posting the information there. But you got to follow all the Advocates Say social media pages.
Okay.
Yes, we're gonna put it out there, guys. So thank you guys. We done went over by 14 minutes, but we still got all of our audience here. So
Thank
again,
you all.
everybody have a great week. We will see you all next Thursday. Okay, have a good one, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.